Well, today's gospel reading is kind of shocking, isn't it? In it, we see a Jesus who is very cold and dismissive and even cruel. In today's gospel reading, Jesus is kind of a jerk to the Canaanite woman. I mean, she comes to him in a time of great distress and need. Her daughter is terribly sick, and yet Jesus ignores her pleas. She pleads with him for help. She says her daughter has a demon. Now, that doesn't mean that her daughter was possessed by a red guy with horns and a pitchfork. This was the way the ancient people made sense of certain diseases, many of them mental illnesses which were not well understood at the time. We expect Jesus to treat this woman with great understanding and compassion, but instead, he's dismissive and cruel. He says to his disciples, "Take this woman from my sight, remove her." But the woman will not give up. She continues to pursue Jesus. She's persistent and bold. It was very bold for a woman to be so forward with a man in Jesus' day, and it was especially bold for a Canaanite, a non-Jew, to be so forward with a Jew. It is why Jesus says to her, "Woman, I have come only for the children of Israel, not for you, a non-Jew." This is not the gentle, kind-hearted, sympathetic Jesus that we see in the rest of the Gospels, is it? And then Jesus says something particularly cruel to her. He compares the Canaanite woman to a dog. Now, this was not a compliment. In Jesus' day, dogs were not kept as family pets. The ancient Jewish people considered dogs to be dirty, to be unclean, and therefore to compare someone to a dog was a great insult. Jesus says to her, "Woman, it is not fair for me to take food that is meant for the children of Israel and to give it to a dog." Now, why is Jesus being so cruel to this woman? Well, some have speculated it's because he was trying to test the woman to see how strong her faith was. But I tend to be more in agreement with the Reverend Ed Townley, who wrote today's words of integration and guidance. In it, he reminds us that most of us who grew up in the Christian church were taught that Jesus, from the time he was a baby in the manger, was simply perfect. He didn't make any mistakes, that he was always fully aware of his divinity, of his oneness with God. But what if Jesus came to this truth as his life unfolded? What if his becoming the Christ was a process? Reverend Townley says the Gospels only make sense if we understand that they show us a Jesus who learned about his divine nature as his ministry unfolded. And so here in his dealings with the Canaanite woman, Jesus was still of the consciousness that his ministry and his message was only for Jewish males. Remember, Jesus was fully human, and so he was susceptible to the societal and religious biases and conditionings of the time and culture in which he lived. Jesus was fully human, just like us, which means he wasn't always perfect, and he made mistakes. But thankfully, Jesus learned from those mistakes. The contemporary Christian writer, Anne Lamott, reminds us, God sent Jesus to join the human experience, which means to make a lot of mistakes. Jesus didn't arrive here knowing how to walk. He had fingers and toes, confusion, sexual feelings, crazy human internal processes. He had the same prejudices as the rest of his tribe. He had to learn that the Canaanite woman was a person. He had to suffer the hardships and tediums and setbacks of being a regular person. If he hadn't, the incarnation would mean nothing. So maybe it was the persistence of the Canaanite woman that brought about a change in Jesus' thinking. Because, after his dealings with her, Jesus begins to understand that his message and his ministry are for all people, regardless of their gender or religion or their culture. Jesus begins to understand, after his dealings with the Canaanite women, that he has come for all people, that all people are children of God, and that the kingdom of heaven is for everyone. And so it was the persistence of the Canaanite woman that brought about a change in Jesus' mind and heart. And that brought about a change in his ministry, which of course has changed the world. And so we should be so grateful for the boldness and persistence of the Canaanite woman. And we should be inspired by her example, especially today, when more and more women are finding their voice and using their voice to speak truth to the powers that be. Now, today's homily is entitled, "Nevertheless, She Persisted." And that's a phrase that has become well known in recent years. You may have remembered where it started from. Senator Elizabeth Warren was on the Senate floor a few years ago, and she was speaking out against the confirmation of Jeff Sessions as the Attorney General based on his civil rights record. And as she was reading from a letter from Coretta Scott King, Senator Warren was silenced by Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. He later said, "The senator was warned. She was given an explanation, and nevertheless, she persisted." Sounds a lot like the Canaanite woman, doesn't it? She was warned, she was given an explanation, and nevertheless, she persisted. And because of that persistence, she effected change, and she worked a miracle. Her daughter is healed. And notice, Jesus didn't take credit for the healing. He says, "Woman, your persistence, your faith brought about the healing." The Canaanite woman effected change by her boldness and persistence and her speaking truth. Now, my friends, I know that it is discouraging for us when we see people in our world today who are being treated like the Canaanite woman, who are dismissed and silenced and mistreated. But we must continue to speak our truth to those who are in positions of power, so that we, like the Canaanite woman, can bring about change and transformation in our world. As Scripture reminds us, be courageous, be strong, stand firm in faith, and let everything that you do be done with great love. Namaste. Hello, everybody. This is Sal Sapienza, and I'm so excited to share with all of you that I've written a brand new book. The book is called Childish Thinking: How the Church Keeps Us Stuck in Sunday School. Now, the title Childish Thinking comes from Christian scripture, where we hear that if we wish to grow in spiritual understanding, then we must let go of childish ways of thinking. And yet so many Christians today, even after years of Bible study and Sunday services, still have a very elementary understanding of their faith. They still understand God as some old man with a long gray beard. They think heaven is a place up in the clouds with pearly gates, that the devil is some red guy with horns and a pitchfork, and that hell is a fiery place below the earth. Those are things that we tell children. None of those descriptions appear anywhere in the Bible. And so in Childish Thinking, I try to dispel many of those misnomers, and I explore topics such as God, Jesus, heaven, hell, sin, prayer, and resurrection from the higher perspectives of ancient Christian mystics and contemporary progressive theologians. After each chapter, there are prayers for quiet contemplation and questions for personal reflection and journal writing. Come learn how you can let go of old ways of thinking and begin to see things with new eyes. Come and learn how you can finally graduate from Sunday school. The book is available now on Amazon, and you can read the entire introduction at childishthinking.faith.